While there may well be a role for affluent nations in the development of those countries that are less well off, deciding what that role should be depends in part on one's worldview.
In the modernization model, rich societies are a role model for poor countries. They show, in a sense, how it can be done. In other words, by investing in other countries, by spreading technology, by spreading a culture that is more materialistic and more concerned with change and economic growth, multinationals are a positive force for economic development around the world, providing wages for factory work as opposed to simply farm labor, or providing wages or income that are higher than would be available in the absence of those organizations in the same countries. From the dependency point of view, the multinational corporations are the heart of the problem. That is, they prevent the development of industries controlled by local people, and they also prevent the development of the economy insofar as the multinationals simply function as a way of funneling raw materials out of the poor countries and making use of the low-income labor, paying very little money in terms of wages, so that the low-income country is supporting the operation of the multinational, but is not actually benefiting from its existence.
But even if wealthier, more advanced nations resolve to help those countries that are less fortunate, the question of how exactly to do that can be enormously challenging.
You obviously cannot suddenly pour enormous amounts of aid into countries and have it used wisely.
It's almost impossible simply to transfer a first world technology to a third world setting. There have to be adaptations. Taking a first world technology into a third world setting also means taking something that is usually very expensive into a setting where there aren't very many resources. And so it's not really viable always to use the highest technology, rich country solutions to deal with problems in poor countries. There are adaptations of the technologies that may be helpful, but there's also a big issue about appropriate technology, finding out what will work in a setting. If you don't have regular electricity, that means that you don't have refrigerators most of the time, which means you can't have drugs that have to be refrigerated to stay effective. So you have to make choices about what you can use there. You have to make choices about what it costs, and you have to worry about the training of professionals to be able to use whatever the technology is. And it's not just true in health, it's true in computers and communications and other fields.
But because the health field often involves life and death situations, the stakes are that much higher, and positive results that much more difficult to achieve. One of the major challenges confronting international teams of doctors and others trying to provide assistance is having a realistic understanding of the conditions in which they're going to be working. Unfortunately, this doesn't always happen. And so, despite the best of intentions, nothing quite prepared Dr. Suraj Achar for what he encountered when he arrived in Kenya as part of a Doctors Without Borders team.
They debriefed me in Barcelona and gave me an idea of what I was going to see. But when I arrived in the place I arrived in Kenya, there was no way to prepare for that. When I arrived, we had to fly through Somalia because there's no direct flights from Nairobi. There's no roads that are passable or safe to cross to this region of Kenya. And the area is so desolate, you couldn't see anything green for tens of miles all around. And unfortunately, when I landed, I recognized the suffering that people were encountering there. The children were severely malnourished. I could see it from their faces and their bellies. And the animals were dying, actually, in front of me. Some of the animals were laying on the ground, suffering because they had nothing to eat and no water.
For Dr. Achar and other physicians working against great odds under horrific conditions, it is the hope of making a difference that often motivates them to keep going.
And that culture of hope is also evident when you work with African physicians, or you work with physicians who are working in very poor settings. So the culture of hope is what infuses medicine, and it allows people to feel passionate about their work, and it drives them to work.
For me, I thought it was a great privilege, an honor to be part of Doctors Without Borders and to be able to go and work in Kenya and help those children who really had nowhere else to go, and to help train local staff, so they hopefully could continue our work after we left. To watch some of these children raise their head for the first time, to smile for the first time, to talk for the first time in 6 months because their malnutrition got better and they became stronger and the depression that was associated with malnutrition resolved, was just an amazing experience. Amazing experience, and I would love to have another opportunity to go with Dr. Supporters and work again.